Long ago we used to say there were two ways of driving horses, bow top and drop thong. This is the bow top whip, hanging on its reel where it's always kept, and this is the drop thong whip. Now the bow top, which was formed into this elegant shape with the aid of whalebone and swan quills, which is why it's always kept on its reel, was the whip of smart driving of the gentleman and the gentleman's coachman. Whereas the drop thong whip, in which the thong drops straight from the handle of the whip like that, that was the whip of the carters and the draymen and the vanners and the cabmen and so on. It was made by plaiting whipcord neatly over a whalebone handle, and it cost originally, I remember, 21 shillings, and yet it was silver mounted, and it had a leather handle, and it had a silver knob on the bottom, but in this case the silver knob is gone. And it's gone because this was not only a whip, it was also a weapon. And some fierce fights took place with it, sadly enough. On a market day when the pubs were open from 10 in the morning till 10 at night, you would hear a row start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You went and looked outside, in the road outside the tap, you had a good chance of seeing two very drunken carters laying into one another with this drop thong whip. And that's why, in fact, so many of them are damaged, like that one is. Nowadays there are still two kinds of driving, but I would classify them differently. Instead of bow top and drop thong, I would say that now driving is divided into uptight and laid back, and I'll try and show you examples of both of what I mean. Now this is the British Driving Society. The members of the British Driving Society, appearing at one of the agricultural shows that take place around the countryside in the course of the summer. An immensely stylish, elegant and classy performance. And yet, 20 years ago we wouldn't have seen this. I don't think the British Driving Society could be more than 20 years old. In fact, hardly more than 20 years ago, I bought a Liverpool gig. That was once a classy vehicle. I bought it from among the nettles in a field. I spent a whole year doing it up with my leisure, and I sold it at the end of the year for £150. And within 15 years I saw it sold at the Reading carriage sale for £1,500. Because in the meanwhile the British Driving Society had come along and they'd conducted a revival of elegant driving in England. An absolutely tremendous achievement. But an achievement, of course, which carried with it certain other things. They produced a lot of attitudes and perhaps some prejudices. They're very strict about what you call things, for instance. When I was young, the eyepieces on a horse's bridle were called the blinkers. Everybody in the world called the blinkers. They're very strict indeed that you must call them winkers. And all my life we drove a pony in a trap, but as far as they're concerned, you drive a horse to a gig, not in a gig, and they're tremendously strict about appearance. You can find yourself getting nowhere because you've got brass on the horse's harness and white metal on the cart, and you couldn't possibly appear without gloves, and you'd be distinctly frowned upon if you ever allowed your reins to stray into both hands. And of course, keeping up this standard is a very, very expensive business. And many of the people who do this are the very rich. I suppose that if you were to take the best of the turnouts in this little class, and it is, in any case, a magnificent class, you'd be in for £1,500 for a horse, and another £1,500 or £2,000 for the carriage, and lucky to get away with less than £1,000 for the harness. So you're getting on to the fact that you probably have to pay out £5,000 in order to have a chance of winning in this sort of class, so that their achievements are to some extent tempered by the feeling of attitudes and by the expense, and a lot of people get frightened off and think that driving is not for them. But what a sight to see. You can really stand there and watch it. And this is a somewhat minor class of the British Driving Society. If you were to see their turnout in great smart shows, like, for instance, the one in the Royal Windsor show in Windsor Park, what you have to see is quite something. Nevertheless, as I say, a lot of people think that driving in that sort of fashion is a little bit beyond them. That's what I would call uptight driving. So let's have a look at driving done laid back, because at the same time, and to be fair, largely as a result of the influence of the British Driving Society, people are starting to drive again in a more normal and everyday way, just for the fun of it. This is a group of 10 or 12 people in Dorset who've constituted themselves into a driving picnic club. They're all country people, and about 12 times in the year they decide to go out driving on a Sunday for a driving picnic. And each member of that's a beauty, he used to be in a greengrocer's cart. Each member of the club takes a turn to arrange it, and it's arranged in different districts, so they drive in many very beautiful places. They take the dogs along. I don't think you get on very well with a dog in a British society, driving society, unless it was a spotted dog trotting under the axle. And although it's something that there's no snobbery and no uptightness of any sort about this, there's certainly a lot of competence and a lot of skill with horses, and some stuff that would stand up in any company. This Welsh Cob stallion, for instance, is famous. He's one of the most famous and highly bred and beautiful Welsh Cobs in England. Yet another horse will be one who sometimes gives his mistress a day's hunting. And the carts, there's no 1,500-pound stick-back gigs here. Most of them are these exercise carts. This is what country people are using now. And of course these are used to exercise the stylish horses too when they're on road exercise. You don't take those carts that we saw a minute ago out on rough occasions. Nevertheless, the harness is very good, very sound, very well kept. The horse is in perfectly good order and well trained. And there's nothing that you can say to belittle the horse management or the way these people go about it. Yet this cart, this exercise cart, was made by this gentleman who's a farm manager. He made it he bought a car axle, he made the body himself, he cut those shafts, he made the steps out of horseshoes, as you can see, and he cut those shafts out of pieces of ash with a chainsaw. And I asked him, there he goes, and it's a very comfortable ride, and I asked him what it cost him, and he said the whole cart cost him £8. So there's no reason at all why everybody can't have a go at this rate. Here goes the Welsh Cob into his cart, still in an exercise cart, this fellow, despite the fact that he's an aristocrat and he belongs to a gentleman who runs one of the classiest studs in England, and once they're all gathered together, then they go out on the route that's been selected by the member who's running this particular afternoon's thing. And they get into the most beautiful places. This black pony who's leading the ride today, leading the drive today, is interesting. She's a purebred fell pony that got into the hands of somebody who I think must have had an accident with her, because she became very, very scared and very, very wild, terrified of anybody going in the stable with her and so on. She was, in fact, on the way to the butcher. But the lady who's got her in that cart is a great horse handler, and she took her on, and in a few months she settled her down splendidly, and now she's going very well indeed. There's the blacksmith's wife, and the blacksmith himself, who shoes almost everybody's horse in the district, driving in a coloured cob of a sort that a traveller might like to own. Now you must say there's nothing strange about this. It's something that anybody could take part in. It's a good way of learning the job, and it's a splendid social occasion. There's Ebony the Fell. I think that's my favourite horse of the whole lot, as a matter of fact. But then I was brought up on the fells and among fell ponies. So there's a difference between a horse at 4 figures and a cart at 4 figures and a set of harness at 4 figures. We've got ponies here who would have gone to the butcher's if somebody hadn't taken them over to look after them, and carts, which in one case at least we know cost under a tenner. About 6 miles, they reckon, is the right thing for after lunch on Sunday. And this is the picnic field. When I was young, all picnics took place with horses. There used to be picnics connected with the chapel, which took place at the wagonettes used to come in, and the hampers used to be loaded in the back, and everybody trotted off behind horses. It's just about the right speed, actually. The weather's nice and the country's nice for a picnic. There we are, the stallion. And the greengrocer. And the blacksmith's horse, and Mrs. Blacksmith's horse next door. And a lady who works for a cattle feed company. And the blacksmith's dogs. Picnic for everybody. And a nice rest in the country. And a wrestling match. And a roll. And that is laid back driving with a Dorset Picnic Club on one of its 12 outings of the year.